Chapter 1. The Mammoth Under Artificial Skies. We begin inside a pristine cryohabitat lab, white walls, frosted glass panels, and in the center of a vast chilled enclosure, under artificial aurora lights, stands a woolly mammoth. Its dense brown ginger fur steams faintly in the cold air, each breath a slow plume drifting upward. Technicians in insulated white parkas move around it with tablets and scanners, monitoring the giant the way one might watch over a sleeping glacier. This is not a zoo. This is a reference, a living blueprint for a new kind of leather. Thus start. Chapter 2. A sample, not a sacrifice. A gloved handler presses a panel. A padded gate opens along a broad, low-stress corridor lined with cushioned rails. The mammoth steps forward, feet thudding softly on rubberized flooring dusted with safe frost. Its breath rolls into the chilled air, calm and steady. Overhead, a rail system hums to life. Structured light grids ripple over the thick wool and the hide beneath. Cameras glide along its flank, capturing every fold, every pore, every swirl of hair. On a monitor, a 3D mammoth appears, hump, layered fur, dense textured skin spinning in high detail. A small line of text fades in at the bottom. All hides shown are lab-grown, no animals harmed. The mammoth snorts a low plume into the cold, and the words disappear. In an adjacent bay, a veterinarian parts the dense fur at the shoulder, revealing pale, thick hide beneath. A microbiopsy tool slips in, taking a tiny sample. The mammoth barely flinches. The tissue drops into a vial labeled Mammoth Derm Cryo Ref 01, snaps into a stainless rack, and with a soft magnetic click, the tray disappears through an insulated hatch. One almost invisible touch, enough to seed an entire world of material. Chapter 3. Growing hide from frozen memory. In a tissue culture lab washed with soft blue light, robotic pipettes move with calm precision. Mammoth dermal cells, taken from that tiny sample, are dispensed into bioscaffolds patterned to imitate ancient proboscidean hide, its thickness gradients, its directional grain. Under the microscope, time accelerates. Cells divide, spread, and organize into layered networks. Dermis, epidermis, dense and slightly wavy, capable of bearing cold and strain like the species that inspired them. The camera pulls back into a chilled bioreactor hall. Towering cylindrical vessels glow with warm amber light inside the cold room. Within them, broad sheets of lab-grown mammoth hide thicken and strengthen. Gentle currents circulate, aligning fibers, training the material for the work it will one day do. In these glass cylinders, the factory is not recreating an animal. It is recreating what the animal's skin could do. Chapter 4. Awakening the leather. A manifold locks onto one reactor with a hiss of sterilized air. An internal drum rises, lifting a heavy, tawny brown sheet of mammoth hide from the nutrient bath. Dense rivulets stream down its surface, revealing rugged grain and underlying strength. As the sheet is guided onto titanium rollers by insulated hands, the leather responds with a deep, resonant creak like an old saddle flexing for the first time in decades. The hide slides into a clear tank of bio-based tanning solution, warmed just enough to stay fluid in this cold world. Gentle agitation begins. Its color deepens from muted brown to a rich, glacial earth tone, like permafrost just beginning to thaw under a winter sun. Emerging, droplets cling to the grain, tracing silver lines through valleys and ridges. Then the hide enters a drying tunnel where cold, filtered air flows over it. Mechanical arms stretch and relax the sheet in steady pulses, teaching the fibers how to flex and recover without cracking in the cold. Edge strips are cut, bent, flexed thousands of times in mechanical testers. Microphones listen closely. The sound must be low, rounded, never sharp. The right acoustic signature for thick, high-quality hide. On a nearby bench, a quality engineer folds a strip over a steel rod, thumb pressing into the curve. The grain opens slightly, then closes again. No pale stress marks, no failure. The hide is no longer just grown, it is trained. Chapter 5. Grain, light, and tundra. Patterns. Now the hide enters the texturing line. Some sections are left with their natural grain. Others pass under engraved steel rollers, receiving subtle embossings inspired by ancient mammoth ivory carvings and tundra patterns, wind, ice, and time, translated into texture. In a lighting bay, samples from each finish are pinned in rows on a cold white wall. Cool polar light, warm indoor light, and neutral white sweep over them in turn. Frost brown tones deepen toward near black. The same material reveals a dozen different personalities depending on the light. On a tablet, those samples become a digital palette, sliding from matte, almost suede-like surfaces to deep, waxed finishes meant for expedition boots and structured luggage. Here, the factory is not just making leather. It is deciding how the future will feel when someone runs their fingers across it. Chapter 6. Mapping the mammoth into design. In the pattern room core, large projections stretch across a central table. Diagrams of mammoth anatomy paired with garment silhouettes. A lead designer trails a stylus along ideal grain flows, drawing coats, boots, bags, and gloves where the fibers are strongest, where they flex the right way, where waste can be brought down to almost nothing. Overhead, projectors cast faint blue outlines onto full hides stretched on self-healing cutting beds. Curved pattern lines flow around the densest fibers for shoulders, backs, boot vamps. An automated cutting head with an oscillating blade follows those lines, the edge gliding through dense mammoth leather with a controlled rasp. Corners round cleanly, no fray, no hesitation. Pieces travel along conveyors to sorting. Thick sections set aside for coats, firmer ones for boots and structured bags, softer zones reserved for gloves, hat bands, collars. In another lane, some panels emerge hair on, dense wool groomed by robotic heads into even luxurious piles. A technician lifts one, gives it a small shake. The wool ripples like a slow wave of snow-covered grass, rustling softly in the cold air. The mammoth, once a silhouette on frozen plains, is becoming a wardrobe map. Chapter 7. Warmth, intelligence, and human hands. In a quiet integration lab, leather and electronics meet. Flexible heating elements and pressure sensors lie beside mammoth panels. A low-heat press bond sensor grids into the undersides of coat backs and glove palms. When they emerge, nothing looks different, still rugged, still grainy. But now, nerves are woven beneath the skin. On a torso dummy, a mammoth back panel wraps around shoulders and spine. A technician taps across it. On a nearby screen, delicate halos of color bloom with every touch, mapping pressure and load. Out on the assembly floor, artisans sit at heavy-duty stitching machines. Coat fronts and backs are joined at the shoulders, seams rolled and smoothed. Collars, cut from stiffer strips, are shaped over warm wooden forms, ready to guard against wind without chafing. Sleeves, built from more flexible cuts, are eased into armholes with curved seams that follow the body. At a footwear bench, thick Mammoth panels are folded around metal lasts, stitched into boots that creak softly when flexed. Across the room, thinner cuts become gloves, stretched and sewn until they move with the hand like a second skin. On another line, large panels wrap around bag shells. Furniture frames are covered in Mammoth leather and accented with hair-on panels at headrests and arm tops. A hand runs over the plush trim. The wool compresses, then springs back with a sound like distant snow sliding off a branch. Here, Mammoth hide stops being just a material. It becomes company. Chapter 8. Cold, stress, and the refusal to fail. The stress testing chambers are where promises are proven. A finished Mammoth coat is strapped onto a torsion rig. Robotic arms twist and bend it through exaggerated motions, simulating years of wear in minutes. A monitor displays stretching and recovery lines. The Mammoth track stays flat, steady, where traditional materials spike and fail. Boots walk endlessly across rough stone, ice-textured plates, and wet metal. Shafts rub against abrasive rollers. Later, under bright lamps, their scuffs tell stories, but the structure remains untouched. In a climate room, coats hang on forms as temperatures plunge and rise, from deep Arctic cold to indoor comfort. Embedded sensors send back data on flexibility and warmth. A snowfall simulator coats boots and bags in fine artificial snow. Flakes melt, bead, slide off. Moisture measurements ticking upward, but performance remains intact. Meanwhile, in the circularity hub, offcuts never become waste. Thick sections, thin strips, hair trimmings all fall into labeled chutes. Scraps are ground and compressed into new sheets. Hair mixes with recycled textiles into dense, insulating padding. On a whiteboard, resource use diagrams tell the larger story. Less land, less water, fewer emissions. A Mammoth that once commanded entire ecosystems now inspires a footprint that shrinks instead of spreading. Destruun. Chapter 9. Brand, Touch, and the First Cold Night. We step into the branding suite. Finished Mammoth coats, boots, bags, and furniture pieces stand on stone plinths under warm, focused light. The palette is deep browns and charcoals with frost-tinged neutrals. A designer runs fingers along a coat shoulder seam, feeling the transition from smooth leather to hair-on trim, watching light slide across each texture shift. On a large screen, a minimal Mammoth silhouette animates into the words, "Inside the Mammoth Factory." Packaging is glacier gray, matte, embossed with a quiet Mammoth icon. Inside, recycled inserts cradle boots and bags. Interior lids carry stylized Arctic landscapes and one simple truth: grown, not hunted. At home, someone opens a shipping box on a kitchen table. Black tissue rustles, revealing a folded Mammoth coat, dark as night until it catches the warm room light. As the coat lifts free, tissue pulls away with a soft, sticky whisper, bearing faint impressions of pressed grains. In the hallway mirror, the coat settles over shoulders, collar framing the neck, sleeves falling to just the right length. The weight encourages a more grounded stance, as if the body remembers colder climates. Outside, in the winter air, breath plumes white. The leather shifts between almost black in shade and rich brown in sun. A hand rests on a stone wall, hide meets rock, smooth meets rough, and the textures define each other. In city streets and snowy overlooks, subway cars and mountain lodges, Mammoth leather creaks softly, warms gradually, and holds steady. It feels less like a product and more like a portable, small climate. Dawn. Chapter 10. Repair, Records, and Learning from Use. Years later, the same coat might return to the factory, not as waste, but as a guest. In a repair studio, a technician studies scuffs along cuffs and hem under bright inspection lights. They clean the leather with a soft, damp cloth, slow circles lifting urban dust and trail salt. The original depth of color pushes back through. Conditioner is rubbed into seams and high-stress areas. Lines soften. The coat seems to exhale. If a panel needs replacing, a matching piece is pulled from the archive, stitched and pressed until the repair vanishes into grain and shade. On a tablet, a digital service record updates original batch ID, test history, repairs logged across time.
We zoom into one label.
The coat has a life story, not just a purchase date. In the analytics room, anonymized data from smart Mammoth garments, temperatures, movement patterns, climate zones scroll across large screens. Designers and engineers in a glass-walled meeting space overlook bioreactors while reviewing that information. They sketch next-generation outerwear, transit seating, safety harnesses, all tuned by real-world use. Every coat, every boot, every bag is not just an end product, it's a teacher. Chapter 11. The factory as a cold-breathing organism. From above, the Mammoth factory looks less like a building and more like a living system. One wing houses the cryo-habitat where the reference Mammoth walks through snow-textured flooring under artificial auroras. Another holds the tissue culture labs, glowing reactors, and conditioning bays. Further along, cutting rooms, assembly floors, test chambers, repair studios, archives. A whiteboard in a side hallway shows a simple Mammoth icon at the center, arrows radiating outward: care, grow, shape, test, use, renew. Outside, daylight moves from pale morning to deep blue evening in time lapse, but inside, flows continue. Brown lines for hide moving through stages, blue lines for water, and resources looping back through treatment, all tracked on a central control screen. The Mammoth factory breathes in electricity, data, and microscopic tissue. It breathes out warmth. Chapter 12. Tribute to what walked the ice. We return one last time to the Mammoth. Inside the chilled enclosure, it walks slowly across packed synthetic snow, trunk curling and uncurling in the air. It pauses near the viewing glass. On the other side, a child presses gloved hands to the pane. As the Mammoth passes, wool and hide slide along the barrier with a deep, muffled shh. The camera moves closer, filling the frame with dense fur and glimpses of skin. Individual hairs catch the cold light, each with its own color and curve. The image dissolves. Now we see a Mammoth coat sleeve in close-up, lab-grown leather and hair-on trim, grain and tone, aligned almost perfectly with the living hide. For a moment, both linger in overlay, the animal and the artifact, the original and the echo. Then only the crafted hide remains, not a trophy, a tribute. We pass through a final montage, boots crunching snow, a coat creaking as luggage is lifted, a bag resting on icy stone, a Mammoth chair holding a sleeping pet by a fireplace. Each real-world moment answered by a flash of the factory, reactors, cutters, sewing machines, test rigs. Finally, a single Mammoth coat hangs in a black void, rotating slowly under a narrow beam of light. We hear the distant hum of bioreactors, the blades rasp, the sewing machines creak, the soft brush through fur, all compressed into one quiet exhale. A line appears at the bottom of the frame. Inside the Mammoth factory, from Mammoth hide to luxury goods. The text fades, The coat turns until one shoulder and sleeve face us, each grain line inviting the imaginary touch of a hand. We cut back, one last time, to the living mammoth, standing under cold skylight at the far side of its enclosure. It turns its head toward us, eyes calm, then walks away, feet pressing softly into synthetic snow. The camera pulls back through the glass, through the corridors, out into the night, where the factory's windows glow faintly against the dark. The image holds on a tiny patch of mammoth leather hanging by a doorway, illuminated by a narrow beam. In that small field of grain, the entire story feels present. Then, silence. Only the memory of creaking hide, rustling fur, soft machinery. And the quiet understanding that somewhere inside the mammoth factory, new hides are already beginning to grow.